Hey everyone! In this video, we're going to go over some basic tips and tricks for combat in Chivalry 2 that will help improve your gameplay overall. Alright, so first order of business is making sure that all of your settings are working for you and not against you. If you choose to play in first person, go into the settings tab and select options. From there, select video and then change your first person field of view to 120. Be sure to look at other video settings such as motion blur, ragdoll lifetime, and ambient corpse quality and set those to either low or off if your computer isn't capable of rendering the slew of enemies that are about to perish before you. Lastly, in the settings, make sure that your keybinds are something that you're comfortable with. Okay, so now that we've got the settings out of the way, let's talk about first person versus third person. Although first person in this game is a lot of fun and you can become quite good, there's a clear advantage for those who choose to use third person. The situational awareness that you gain from third person is worth every bit of immersion loss to me because you'll survive in situations longer if you can see exactly where all of your opponents are. Being able to see more around you and not being limited to a small frontal cone like you would be in first person helps you win more 1vx fights and avoid most sneak attacks from behind. Not only that, but footworking in third person combat is more fluid and allows you to maneuver around your opponents with ease instead of dodging into a wall or even into another enemy. First person, however, is great for archery or throwing objects, and I prefer it if I'm not engaging in melee combat as it gives you a more accurate gauge of where your projectiles will land. For instance, if you didn't know, in third person your arrows as an archer will always shoot slightly to the left, and that's something that you don't have to account for when you're playing in first person. If you like to switch between the two modes like I do, make sure to change your key binding to something more accessible. At the end of the day, the choice is ultimately yours on which point of view you enjoy playing the most, so pick what you like. In the tutorial, we can all see the importance of riposting and countering. If you don't remember from the tutorial, a riposte or counter will allow you to deflect all incoming attacks for 0.5 seconds. So the question is, when do you use counters versus when do you use ripostes? Using counters is great for one-on-one battles since they increase your stamina instead of draining it like a riposte does, and this is why you'll usually see high-level duels last for an eternity before anyone dies. In team play, when you're fighting against many opponents, trying to land a successful counter from one opponent's attack could leave you vulnerable to getting hit by the other enemies that are also trying to murder you. Typically, in situations where I'm fighting more than two opponents at a time, holding block and waiting for that first strike to land against you and then riposting will be your best option. Just as a quick side note, as of the current patch 2.6.0, the active parry that you're supposed to get after performing a successful counter or riposte is inconsistent but is being addressed. My next piece of advice, as someone who's been playing Chivalry 2 since the alpha, goes hand in hand with what we just talked about a moment ago with the riposte and with the counters. One of the biggest mistakes that I see from newer players is that they continually hold block while waiting for their opponent to strike them. The longer you hold your block up, the more your stamina will deplete. If your stamina reaches 0 and you attempt to block an incoming attack, your block will be broken and your weapon will be dropped, leaving you vulnerable to an attack. Stamina management is key, and if you find yourself struggling with low stamina, consider countering an attack instead of riposting so that your stamina will increase instead of decrease like it would with a riposte. Also, there's nothing wrong with tactical retreats in team objective. If you need to back up from a fight and disengage for a moment to gain stamina, then do it. Something else to consider is trying to read your opponents and looking for telltale signs that they're about to perform an attack, such as moving toward you or watching for a kick that's coming your way. It takes time and practice, but it's important to learn and helps you stay alive in the long run. I know that we would all like to be a one-man army, but unfortunately, in most cases, it's just not possible. My next tip is relatively simple, and it's to position yourself well enough that you don't get mobbed by the other team. The amount of times I've seen my teammates get swarmed because they run headfirst into 10 enemies is just mind-boggling. There's a reason why spear users are hated in Chivalry 2, and it's because they know how to play around their teammates and apply pressure on the battlefield. You want to be part of the X in the 1vx, not the one person trying to take on the world. If you're actively making a point to rush in guns a-blazing into fights that you will likely lose, just don't. Wait for your team and move as a unit, especially in team objective. It'll save you a lot of frustration, and I guarantee you'll get more kills than deaths because of it. However, that being said, if you are one of the gigachads that plays the objective like Fallmeyer, where you have to carry the barrels and continually throw yourself into the enemy team in an attempt to blow up the doors, we pub stompers all appreciate you. I know that it seems silly to even bring up, but my next piece of advice is to use more than just horizontal swings. Too often in Chivalry 2, we fall into a pattern of only using horizontal swings, and I myself am guilty of doing this as well. If you want to know a surefire way to get vote kicked in this game, it is to only ever use horizontal swings in an attempt to kill an enemy in front of you when you're surrounded by teammates on both sides of you. For the sake of everyone on your team, make use of overheads and stabs when you're in a mosh pit of bodies to avoid damaging your teammates. Something that you'll notice is that most people want to fall into the rhythm of blocking and then using a horizontal slash, so feint your attack out of a horizontal into another attack type. Doing this throws off a lot of people who are just looking for the easy counter, and it leaves them scrambling to try to find your new attack type. Correctly using these feints and other attack types is an important part of any offensive strategy. On to the most important piece of advice that I could ever give you for Chivalry 2. If you are not mercilessly beating your enemies to a pulp, looking like an absolute Giga Chad, then you are not playing the game correctly. I'm just going to throw it out there. When it comes to peak fashion, my Agatha Footman is a prime example of good looks and prowess on the battlefield. Yes, having higher tier cosmetics gets you singled out as much as if you were playing an archer being chased by 5 enemies. But that shouldn't matter to you, because by now you've mastered basic combat techniques and you're ready to send your opponents into the Nether Realm. Good luck out there, guys, and thank you so much for watching.